I pray your dad dies alone. A bitter ex spits out those cruel words, only to collapse in shock when she discovers the man she cursed has secretly been her anonymous donor all along. But when regret, hidden love, and a race against time collide, will forgiveness come before it's too late? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The dialysis center smelled of disinfectant and fear. Mary Ellen knew that smell by heart now, 3 days a week for 2 years. She settled into the cracked vinyl chair, watching Nurse Janet prep the machine with practiced efficiency. Outside the window, November rain streaked the glass, turning the parking lot into a blur of gray. "How you doing today, Mrs. Mary?" Janet asked, sliding the needle into the fistula on Mary Ellen's arm. "Still breathing." Mary Ellen winced at the familiar sting. "That's about all I can say." The machine hummed to life, pulling blood through clear tubes. Mary Ellen closed her eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. Never did during these 4-hour sessions. Instead, her mind wandered to the stack of envelopes on her kitchen counter. Final notices in red ink, Medicare statements that made no sense, bills from specialists she couldn't remember seeing. "You look tired," Janet said, adjusting the flow rate. "Tired doesn't cover it." Mary Ellen shifted in the chair, her joints protesting. 68 years old, and I'm drowning in paper. You'd think, after all this time, life would get easier." Janet patted her shoulder. "The Lord doesn't give us more than we can handle." Mary Ellen bit back her response. The Lord had given her plenty, a cheating husband, 30 years of scraping by, and now kidneys that had quit on her. Some days she wondered if God had mixed up her file with someone else's. A man 2 chairs over started coughing, harsh and wet. Mary Ellen turned away, staring at the motivational poster on the wall. "Every day is a gift," she snorted. "Some gifts you wanted to return." The thought brought Charles rushing back, unwanted as always. 43 years since he'd walked out their front door with his secretary's lipstick on his collar. 43 years, and she could still see his face when he'd said he didn't love her anymore, like she was nothing, like their 20 years together meant less than dust. Her fist clenched around the armrest. The machine beeped a warning. "Easy there," Janet said, checking the readings. "Your blood pressure's spiking." Just thinking about things I shouldn't. But she couldn't stop. Charles with his new wife in that big house across town. Charles with his perfect second family while she'd raised Rachel alone. Charles probably golfing in Florida right now, not a care in the world, while she sat tethered to this machine like a dying dog. "I hope you rot," she thought, then caught herself. Number. She hoped for worse than that. She hoped he died forgotten, unloved, with nobody to hold his hand when the end came, just like she'd been alone all these years. By the time Rachel's car pulled into the driveway that evening, Mary Ellen's bones ached deep. She leaned heavy on her walker, making her way to the kitchen, where her daughter was already unpacking groceries. "You didn't have to buy all this," Mary Ellen said. "You need to eat, Mom." Rachel's voice carried that forced cheerfulness that made Mary Ellen's teeth hurt. Emily setting the table. Her granddaughter bounced into the kitchen, 18 and bright as a new penny. "Hey, Grandma, Mom made that casserole you like." Mary Ellen managed a smile for Emily. The girl didn't deserve her bad mood. They ate in relative quiet until Rachel cleared her throat. "Mom, we need to talk about the bills." "Not at dinner." "Then when?" Rachel set down her fork. "The mortgage is 2 months behind. Your insurance isn't covering half of what—" "I know what it's not covering." The words came out sharper than intended. "You think I don't know? You think I enjoy being a burden? Nobody said you're a burden." "You didn't have to." Mary Ellen pushed her plate away. "Every week you come here with groceries I didn't ask for, paying bills I can't afford. How else should I take it?" Emily shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe we could ask—" "Ask who?" Mary Ellen's voice rose. "There's nobody to ask. Your grandfather made sure of that when he left us for that woman." Rachel's jaw tightened. "Dad's been gone for decades, Mom. This isn't about him. Everything's about him. The words exploded out before Mary Ellen could stop them. He destroyed this family, left us with nothing while he played house with someone half his age. Mom, please. I pray your dad dies alone. The words hung in the air like a slap. Emily's fork clattered to her plate. Rachel went white, then red. How can you say that? Rachel's voice shook. How can you still carry that much hate? It's not hate, it's justice. It's poison, Mom, and you've been drinking it for 40 years. Rachel stood, grabbing her purse. Emily, we're going. But Mom... Now. They left without another word. Mary Ellen sat at the empty table, listening to their car disappear into the night. The casserole had gone cold. She scraped the plates into the trash, her hands trembling. Later, she stood at the living room window, watching rain run down the glass. Her reflection stared back, thin, hollow-eyed, carved by years of anger she couldn't let go. She'd become exactly what she'd never wanted to be, alone, bitter, speaking curses into the dark. The house creaked around her, empty as a tomb. She pressed her forehead against the cold glass and wondered when hating Charles had become more important than loving anything else. The coffee maker gurgled its familiar morning song while Mary Ellen shuffled around her kitchen, each movement a small victory against the stiffness in her joints. She'd slept poorly, Rachel's wounded face haunting her dreams. The clock read 6:47. Rachel would arrive at 7:30 sharp, same as every dialysis day, despite everything. She poured black coffee into her chipped mug, the one Emily had painted in 3rd grade with crooked flowers. 20 minutes later, Rachel's Honda pulled into the drive. They rode in silence, Rachel's knuckles white on the steering wheel. Mary Ellen stared out at the passing cornfields, drought-brown and brittle. Neither mentioned last night. The space between them felt wide as an ocean. At the clinic, Janet greeted them with her usual warmth, but even she sensed the tension. Rachel helped Mary Ellen to her chair without meeting her eyes, then disappeared to the waiting room with her laptop. "Family troubles?" Janet asked, hooking up the machine. "When aren't there?" Mary Ellen had just closed her eyes when someone cleared their throat. Mrs. Peterson, the clinic administrator, stood beside her chair, holding a manila folder. "Mary Ellen, could I speak with you for a moment? If this is about payment plans, I already told billing." No. Mrs. Peterson's face broke into an unusual smile. "This is good news. Wonderful news, actually." Mary Ellen's stomach clenched. In her experience, administrators bearing folders never brought wonderful anything. "Your account has been paid." "I don't understand." "This month's session." "Everything." Mrs. Peterson opened the folder, showing a zero balance. "All outstanding bills. The past 6 months of treatments plus the next year prepaid. Someone's covered it all." The machine's steady rhythm filled the silence. Mary Ellen stared at the paper, the numbers blurring. "Who?" "They've requested to remain anonymous. The payment came through this morning, certified check, completely legitimate. You don't owe us a penny." Mary Ellen's throat constricted. "But that's thousands of dollars." $27,000 to be exact. Mrs. Peterson squeezed her shoulder. "Someone cares about you very much." Janet had stopped pretending to check other patients' charts. Several people in nearby chairs were listening. Mary Ellen's hands shook as she handed back the folder. I can't." "Just accept the blessing," Mrs. Peterson said gently. "That's all you need to do." Rachel drove her home in the same silence, but Mary Ellen barely noticed. Her mind spun with possibilities. Who had that kind of money? Who even knew about her bills? That Sunday, she could barely contain herself through the opening hymns. When Pastor Williams called for testimonies, her hand shot up before she could second-guess herself. "I need to share something." Her voice wavered as she stood. "Many of you know I've been struggling. The medical bills, the house payments, I've been drowning." Sympathetic faces nodded back at her. These people knew. They'd been bringing casseroles and offering prayers for months. This week, someone paid my medical debt. All of it. Every penny. Her voice cracked. I don't know who. They didn't want credit, but God used them to save me. The congregation erupted in amens and praise. Mrs. Henderson dabbed her eyes. Tom Baker started clapping, and soon everyone joined in. Mary Ellen sank into her pew, overwhelmed. The Lord provides, Pastor Williams said, beaming. He never forgets his children. For the first time in years, Mary Ellen felt something crack inside her chest. Not her heart breaking, but maybe, just maybe, the shell around it starting to give way. She hummed on the drive home, actually hummed. The afternoon sun painted everything gold. She'd make Emily's favorite cookies, call Rachel and apologize properly. Maybe things could be different now. Maybe this gift was a sign to let go of the old poison and start fresh. But when she walked through her front door, Rachel sat at the kitchen table, hands folded, face grave as a funeral. "Mom, sit down." "What's wrong? Is Emily okay?" "She's fine. Please, just sit." Mary Ellen lowered herself into the chair, the day's lightness evaporating. Rachel took a breath, seemed to change her mind, then started again. "I know who paid your bills." "What? How could you?" "He called me. He wanted to make sure it went through properly, but stayed anonymous." Mary Ellen's pulse quickened. "Who called you?" Rachel met her eyes, and in that look, Mary Ellen knew. Knew before the words came. Knew with a certainty that turned her blood to ice water. "Dad." The kitchen tilted. Mary Ellen gripped the table's edge. "No." "Mom?" "No, you're lying. Why would I lie about this?" Rachel's voice stayed steady, but tears tracked down her cheeks. "He's been sending money for years." "Smaller amounts I never told you about because I knew you'd refuse. But when he heard about the dialysis bills piling up, he sent everything." "Charles." The name tasted like ash in her mouth. "Your father." "My father. The man you wished would die alone just 3 days ago." Mary Ellen's vision blurred. The room spun. $27,000. Charles's money keeping her alive while she cursed him to die. She stood too fast, the chair scraping against linoleum, and ran for the bathroom. Made it just in time to vomit, her body rejecting this truth as violently as her mind did. Behind her, Rachel's footsteps approached, stopped, retreated. Mary Ellen slumped against the cool tile wall, her testimony from church echoing in her ears. God used them to save me. God had used Charles. Charles, who she'd hated for 43 years. Charles, who'd been her lifeline all along. Mary Ellen stayed on the bathroom floor until her knees ached and the cold seeped through her house dress. When she finally emerged, Rachel had made tea. Chamomile, Mary Ellen's least favorite, but she drank it anyway, needing something to do with her shaking hands. How long? The words scraped her throat raw. The small amounts? About 10 years, 100 here, 200 there, always through me, always with strict instructions not to tell you. 10 years, a decade of Charles's money filtering into her life while she'd spent those same years perfecting her hatred of him. The house payment last winter when you fell behind. No. Mary Ellen's cup rattled against the saucer. The new furnace 3 years ago. Stop. Emily's school supplies every August, her clarinet rental, Stop! The cup shattered against the wall, tea dripping down the faded wallpaper. Rachel didn't flinch. Mary Ellen pressed her palms against her temples. Behind her eyes, memories erupted like flashbulbs. Charles at 25, promising to love her forever. Charles at 42, packing his clothes while she begged. Charles walking out the door with Sharon, that woman, while 7-year-old Rachel sobbed in the hallway. He left us. The words came out broken. He chose her. I know. Then why? Why would he? But Mary Ellen's chest heaved. It doesn't make sense. You don't abandon someone, then play guardian angel. You don't get to destroy a life, then sprinkle money on it like that fixes everything. Rachel reached across the table, but Mary Ellen pulled back. "He's not asking for anything, Mom. No recognition, no thank you, no contact. He told me he wanted to make sure you were okay." "Okay?" Mary Ellen laughed, bitter as black coffee. "I haven't been okay since 1981. She stood, swaying slightly, and moved to the window. Outside, Mrs. Patterson walked her ancient poodle. Normal life. Normal people who hadn't just discovered their existence depended on someone they'd wished dead. His second marriage failed. Rachel's voice came soft. "Did you know that?" Mary Ellen's shoulders stiffened. "Good!" "Mom?" "What? Am I supposed to feel sorry for him?" "He made his choice. He's been alone for 15 years, lives in a one-bedroom apartment over on Maple, still works at the hardware store." Mary Ellen could picture it perfectly. Charles in that red hardware store vest, mixing paint and cutting keys, growing old in a place that smelled like sawdust and loneliness. The image should have brought satisfaction. Instead, it sat heavy in her stomach, like a stone. "I don't need his pity." "It's not pity." "Then what is it?" She whirled around. "Guilt? Trying to buy his way into heaven? Well, he can't purchase forgiveness from me." Rachel stood, gathering her purse. "Maybe it's just love, Mom." Maybe he never stopped. "Don't. Think what you want. Hate him if you need to, but that man's money is the only reason you still have this house, the only reason you're getting treatment, the only reason Emily has a chance at college." Rachel paused at the door. "You prayed he'd die alone. Looks like he's been living that way for years, sending everything extra he had to the family he lost." The door closed with a soft click. Mary Ellen stood in her empty kitchen, surrounded by evidence of Charles's invisible presence. The new refrigerator she'd thought came from Rachel's tax refund. The roof repair, after the tornado, she'd assumed insurance covered. Even the comfortable chair she sat in for dialysis, the nurse had said an anonymous donor upgraded her to the premium model, Charles. All of it, Charles. That night, sleep wouldn't come. She turned her pillow over and over, seeking a cool spot that didn't exist. The darkness pressed down, thick with questions that had no good answers. At 2 a.m, she gave up and reached for her Bible, dusty from months of neglect. It fell open to Proverbs, a passage underlined in faded blue ink from decades ago. "If your enemy is hungry, give him food to eat. If he is thirsty, give him water to drink." But Charles wasn't her enemy, was he? Enemies were simple. You could hate enemies with clean conscience. Charles was... what? The man who'd broken her? The man who'd saved her? The contradiction made her head pound. She closed her eyes, words tumbling out that she hadn't spoken in years. "Why?" She whispered to the ceiling, to God, to whoever might be listening. "Why would you use him?" Of all people, why Charles? The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked. A car passed outside, headlights sliding across the wall. No answer came, no voice from heaven, no sudden clarity, just the awful pressing weight of owing her life to someone she'd spent 40 years learning to hate. "I don't understand." Her voice cracked. "Help me understand." The Bible slipped from her fingers. She pulled the quilt her mother had made up to her chin, feeling small and lost as a child. Somewhere across town, Charles was sleeping, or maybe lying awake too, alone in his one-bedroom apartment, surrounded by hardware store schedules and empty rooms. The man she'd prayed would die alone had been keeping her alive all along. The irony tasted like tears. The doorbell rang at 9:30 the next morning. Mary Ellen knew it was Rachel before she opened it. Her daughter had a particular way of pressing the button, 2 quick taps like she was apologizing for the intrusion. "Coffee's old," Mary Ellen said by way of greeting. "That's fine." Rachel followed her to the kitchen, Emily trailing behind with her backpack. "Em has early dismissal today. Mind if she does homework here later?" "Course not." Mary Ellen poured the bitter coffee, watching her granddaughter settle at the table with a mathematics textbook. The girl's presence always softened the edges of any conversation. Rachel cleared her throat. Mom, I need to ask you something. If it's about your father, he wants to see you. The coffee mug stopped halfway to Mary Ellen's lips. No. Just once, that's all he's asking. I said no. Emily looked up from her textbook, green eyes bright with interest, the same eyes Charles had passed down through the generations. Rachel pulled out a chair, sitting down careful as if the wrong movement might shatter something. He's not well, Mom. Good. Mom, what part of no needs explaining? I will never look that man in the eye again, not after what he did. Rachel's fingers traced the wood grain of the table. He's 73. Works 10-hour shifts at the hardware store because he gives away most of his Social Security. His hands shake now. Mr. Peterson says he's seen him eating crackers for lunch because... Stop. Mary Ellen set her mug down hard. Coffee sloshed over the rim. You think I care if he's hungry? You think that changes anything? Why can't you just forgive Grandpa? Both women turned. Emily had closed her textbook, looking between them with genuine confusion. It's complicated, sweetheart, Rachel said quickly. But he's been helping Grandma all this time. Doesn't that mean he's sorry? Mary Ellen's chest tightened, out of the mouths of babes. Being sorry doesn't erase 40 years. But being angry doesn't either, Emily said, then ducked her head back to her homework as if she hadn't just stripped the conversation to its bones. The kitchen fell silent, except for the scratch of Emily's pencil and the distant hum of the refrigerator Charles had paid for. Rachel leaned forward. He's not asking for forgiveness. He just wants to see you, to explain. Explain what? How he fell in love with his secretary? How our wedding vows meant nothing? How he could walk away from 22 years without looking back? Maybe explain why he never really left, Rachel said quietly. Why he's been watching over you all these years. Mary Ellen turned to the sink, gripping the counter. Through the window, she could see her bird feeder, another anonymous gift that appeared last winter. Everything in her life bore his invisible fingerprints. He goes to the evening service at First Methodist, Rachel continued, sits in the back row, leaves before the final hymn so he won't run into anyone from your church. The image formed unbidden, Charles in a pew, head bowed, alone, praying to the same God she prayed to, maybe even praying for her. Just once, Rachel pressed, in public. Wherever you're comfortable, you can leave whenever you want. Why do you care so much? Because he's my father. Because you're my mother. Because Emily deserves to know her grandfather before... Rachel stopped. Before what? Before it's too late. Mary Ellen closed her eyes. The weight of those words, the finality of them, pressed against her ribs. Fine. The word came out sharp as broken glass. Once. Only once. Tomorrow at 2 o'clock at Carlson's Diner. Public. Witnesses. And when I'm done telling him exactly what I think of him, that's it. No more requests. No more messages through you. Rachel exhaled slowly. Thank you. Don't thank me. This isn't kindness. That evening, Mary Ellen couldn't sit still. She walked from room to room, adjusting pictures that didn't need adjusting, wiping surfaces that were already clean. Her reflection caught her off guard in the hallway mirror. When had she gotten so old? Gray hair she'd stopped coloring years ago, lines around her mouth from decades of frowning. What would Charles see when he looked at her? She pulled out a dress she hadn't worn in months, navy blue with small flowers. Too nice for Carlson's Diner. She hung it back up, chose slacks and a sweater instead, then changed her mind again. This is stupid, she told her reflection. It doesn't matter what I wear. But she found herself in the bathroom, putting on lipstick for the first time since Easter. Her hands trembled as she traced the familiar motion. The woman in the mirror looked afraid. I'm not afraid of him, she said aloud. The woman in the mirror didn't look convinced. She sat on the edge of her bed, Bible open to Ephesians. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as Christ forgave you." The words blurred. She snapped the Bible shut. Tomorrow she would see Charles. After 40 years of hate, she would look at the man who'd broken her heart and saved her life. She didn't know which Charles she feared more, the one who'd left or the one who'd secretly stayed. Sleep wouldn't come. She lay in the darkness, practicing what she would say, each word a small weapon she'd been sharpening for decades. Rachel's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. They'd driven past Carlson's diner twice already, circling the block like vultures over carrion. "We can go home," Rachel offered. "He'll understand." Mary Ellen stared through the windshield at the diner's faded awning. Same cracked letters spelling out Carlson's that had been there since the 70s. Same bell that jangled when the door opened. Charles had taken her here for pie after their first son was born. Park the car. The lunch rush had cleared out. Only a few truckers sat at the counter hunched over coffee and newspapers. Mary Ellen chose a booth in the corner where she could see the door. The vinyl squeaked under her weight. Coffee? The waitress looked about Emily's age, bright-eyed and eager. "Just water." Rachel ordered tea she wouldn't drink. They sat in silence, Mary Ellen's fingers drumming against the Formica table. Every time the bell rang, her spine stiffened. At 2:07 he walked in. The first thing she noticed was how small he'd become. Charles had always been tall, broad-shouldered, filling doorways with his presence. This man moved carefully, one hand gripping a cane she'd never seen him need. His shoulders curved inward like parentheses around an apology. White hair, completely white now, not the salt and pepper she remembered. Deep lines carved channels from his nose to his mouth. But his eyes found hers immediately, pale blue and searching. And for a moment, she was 23 again, dancing at their wedding while he whispered promises in her ear. He approached slowly, giving her time to bolt. She didn't. "Mary Ellen." His voice had gone gravelly with age. "Thank you for coming." She said nothing. He lowered himself into the booth across from her, wincing slightly. Rachel shifted beside her mother, a referee waiting for the first blow. The waitress bounced over. "What can I get you?" "Just coffee," Charles said. "Black." Some things never changed. They sat in silence thick as molasses. Mary Ellen studied the table scratches and coffee rings. Charles cleared his throat twice, started to speak, stopped. The coffee arrived. He wrapped both hands around the mug like he was cold, though the diner was warm. "You look well," he finally managed. "I look old." "We both do." More silence. A trucker laughed at something on his phone. The coffee maker gurgled. Mary Ellen's anger felt slippery, hard to grip. "Rachel says you know. About the payments. I know you've been playing God with my life." He flinched. "That wasn't my intention." "What was your intention, Charles? Guilt money? Trying to buy your way into heaven?" "No." He looked directly at her, and she saw exhaustion etched in every line of his face. I wanted to help, to do something right for once." For once. She let the words hang between them like a blade. "My second marriage ended 15 years ago," he said quietly. "Linda left me for someone who could give her what I couldn't." "What's that? Faithfulness?" "Love." He stared into his coffee. "I couldn't love her because I'd never stopped loving you." The words landed like stones in still water. Mary Ellen's chest tightened. "Don't you dare." "I'm not asking for anything. I know what I did. I know it's unforgivable. But when I heard about your kidney disease, about the bills," his voice cracked, "I couldn't stand the thought of you suffering because of money. Not when I had it to give." "So you've been what?" "Watching me, stalking me." "No, Rachel told me things sometimes, when I asked, and I heard things at church." You don't go to our church." "First Methodist, evening service." He traced the rim of his mug with one finger. "I sit where I can see the stained glass window. The one with Jesus and the children. You always loved that window." She remembered. They'd been married there 47 years ago. She'd walk down the aisle with that window casting rainbow light across her dress. "I live alone now," he continued. "Small apartment on Maple Street. I eat dinner at 5:30, watch the news, go to bed by 9. Exciting life." A bitter smile crossed his lips. "Sometimes I walk past our old house. The Hendersons painted it yellow, I know. The oak tree out front got so big. Lightning took it 2 years ago. Oh." He looked genuinely sad about the tree. "We carved our initials in that tree. They're gone now." Neither of them mentioned that the initials had been carved over long before the lightning strike. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Charles said. "I know better. I just wanted you to know that every check I sent, every bill I paid, it wasn't charity, it wasn't pity, it was—" He struggled for words. "It was the only way I could still take care of you. The only way I could keep my promise to love you in sickness and in health. You broke that promise 40 years ago. I broke a lot of promises, but not all of them, not completely." Mary Ellen stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I don't need your money. I don't need your guilt. I don't need you." She was halfway to the door when his voice stopped her. "I know. You never did need me. You were always stronger than me, Mary. Always." She pushed through the door, the bell jangling her exit. Rachel scrambled to leave money on the table and followed. In the car, Mary Ellen stared through the window at Charles still sitting in the booth, shoulders bowed, alone with his cold coffee. He looked like a photograph of regret, sepia-toned and fading. "Mom?" Mary Ellen couldn't answer. Something had shifted in her chest, a grinding of tectonic plates that had been locked in place for decades. She watched until Charles finally stood, moving like his bones hurt, and walked slowly to his car, an old sedan, nothing fancy despite apparently having money to spare. As Rachel pulled away, Mary Ellen's eyes stayed on him until he was just another speck in the rearview mirror. A lonely old man getting smaller with distance, carrying the weight of choices that couldn't be undone. The oatmeal bubbled on the stove, thick and stubborn, like the thoughts churning in Mary Ellen's head. She'd barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Charles in that booth, shoulders curved inward like parentheses around an empty space where his life should have been. She stirred harder. The wooden spoon scraped against the pot's bottom. "You're going to wear a hole through that pan," Rachel said from the doorway. Mary Ellen didn't look up. "It needs stirring." "It needed stirring 5 minutes ago. Now you're just punishing it." The oatmeal had gone pasty, clumping together like regret. Mary Ellen turned off the heat and dumped it in a bowl, though her appetite had vanished somewhere around 3 a.m. Rachel poured herself coffee and sat at the small kitchen table. "You could at least acknowledge what he's trying to do. He's trying to clear his conscience before he dies. Maybe. Or maybe he's trying to make things right. Some things can't be made right." Mary Ellen pushed the oatmeal around with her spoon. "You can't unbreak a plate by buying a new one." Her phone rang. Rachel answered it, and Mary Ellen watched her daughter's face shift from neutral to careful. "It's Dad. He wants to know if he can come by." "No." Mom, this is my home. My safe place. He doesn't get to invade it." Rachel held the phone against her shoulder. "He says he'll only stay a few minutes. He has something he needs to say. He said plenty yesterday." But even as the words left her mouth, Mary Ellen felt that grinding sensation again, tectonic plates shifting beneath years of carefully maintained anger. She thought of him alone in that apartment on Maple Street, eating dinner at 5:30 sharp, with no one to tell about his day. "Fine. 20 minutes. That's all." Rachel relayed the message and hung up. "He'll be here at 2. Mary Ellen spent the next 3 hours cleaning her already spotless house. She straightened pictures that didn't need straightening, dusted surfaces that held no dust. When the doorbell rang at exactly 2 o'clock, She was rearranging the magazines on the coffee table for the third time. Charles stood on her porch holding a small paper bag, looking like he might bolt at any sudden movement. His coat hung loose on his frame. When had he gotten so thin? "Thank you for seeing me," he said. She stepped aside without a word. He entered carefully, like crossing a minefield. His eyes swept the living room, taking in the family photos that didn't include him, the life she'd built from the rubble he'd left behind. "You've made it nice," he said. "Warm." "What's in the bag?" "Oh." He seemed to remember he was holding it. "Lemon drops. The kind you used to like, from that candy shop downtown." She hadn't had lemon drops in 20 years. The fact that he remembered twisted something in her chest. "I can't eat candy anymore, diabetes." "I'm sorry. I didn't know." They sat on opposite ends of the couch, the space between them vast as decades. Rachel busied herself in the kitchen, pretending not to eavesdrop. "You said you had something to say," Mary Ellen prompted. Charles folded and unfolded his hands. "I wanted you to know that I've been following your treatments." "Not stalking," he added quickly, "just caring from a distance. When you started dialysis 3 years ago, I wanted to come see you. Every week I'd drive to the clinic and sit in the parking lot trying to work up the courage. But you didn't." "No. I was a coward. Again." He looked at his hands. "I told myself you didn't want to see me." Which was true, but really, I was afraid to face what I'd done. "And what changed?" "Time ran out." He met her eyes. "We're not young anymore, Mary. I couldn't die knowing you were struggling, and I did nothing. So this is about your peace of mind." "No, it's about yours. About making sure you have what you need, even if it comes from someone you hate." The word hate sat between them, ugly and honest. "Linda, my second wife, she said I was a ghost in my own life, said I was always somewhere else, even when I was right there with her." Charles's voice grew quieter. "She was right. I was here, with you. In my mind, I never left this house." "But you did leave." "My body did. The stupidest, most selfish thing I've ever done. Linda was exciting, different, for about 6 months. Then I realized different isn't better. It's just different. And what I had with you, what I threw away, that was home." Mary Ellen stood, needing distance. She moved to the window, watching the empty street. "It took me 40 years to say that," Charles continued. 40 years of empty dinners and hollow conversations and waking up next to someone who wasn't you. Linda left me because she could tell. She said, loving a man who's in love with someone else is like being haunted by a ghost you can't see. "I'm not a ghost, Charles. I'm a real person you hurt." "I know, God, I know." The afternoon sun slanted through the window, catching the dust motes floating between them. Mary Ellen saw how the light revealed every line in Charles's face, every year of regret carved into his skin. He stood to leave, moving slowly toward the door. At the threshold, he paused. "Would it be possible? Could I come to church with you? Just once? Sunday service?" Mary Ellen's automatic no stuck in her throat. She thought of him sitting alone at First Methodist, watching stained glass windows and remembering better days. She didn't answer. Couldn't say yes, couldn't quite say no. Charles understood. "Thank you for the 20 minutes, he said, and walked to his car. From the window, Mary Ellen watched him drive away, the paper bag of lemon drops forgotten on her coffee table. Sunday arrived wrapped in morning frost. Mary Ellen stood before her bedroom mirror, adjusting her pearl necklace 3 times. The navy dress she chose was modest, proper, armor against the whispers she knew would come. "You ready, Mama?" Rachel called from downstairs. Number. She'd never be ready for this. Charles waited in the church parking lot, leaning against his old Buick. He'd dressed in his best suit, the one that now hung loose on his shrinking frame. When he saw them, he straightened, smoothing his tie with nervous fingers. "Thank you," he said simply. Emily bounced ahead, grabbing his hand without hesitation. "Come on, Grandpa." "We always sit in the 5th row." Mary Ellen's stomach clenched. The child made it look so easy. The moment they entered First Baptist, heads turned. Martha Williams's mouth fell open. Tom Bradley did a double-take from his usher position. The whispers started before they even reached their pew, a rustling like wind through dead leaves. Is that Charles? After all these years. The nerve of him! Mary Ellen kept her eyes forward, her spine rigid. She slid into the pew first, then Emily, placing the child between them like a buffer. Charles sat on the aisle, his hands folded tight in his lap. Pastor Williams began with announcements, but Mary Ellen heard nothing. Every nerve screamed awareness of the man sitting 3 feet away, of the congregation's eyes boring into their backs. This was a mistake. She should never have. The organ swelled. The congregation rose for the first hymn. Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. Charles's voice cracked on the first line. Mary Ellen glanced sideways. His hymnal trembled in his hands. That saved a wretch like me. On wretch, Charles's shoulders began to shake. The hymnal slipped. Tears ran freely down his weathered cheeks, and he made no move to hide them. I once was lost, but now am found. A sob escaped him, raw, broken, 40 years in the making. The congregation's voices faltered. People turned to stare, but not with judgment anymore. They watched an old man break apart in God's house, undone by words he'd sung 100 times, but only now understood. Was blind, but now I see. Charles sank into the pew, covering his face. His grief filled the sanctuary, honest and terrible, and absolutely naked. Emily reached over, placing her small hand on his arm. The whispers died. Martha Williams dabbed her eyes. Tom Bradley cleared his throat. Even Mary Ellen felt her anger crack like ice in spring thaw. Pastor Williams waited for the hymn to end, then spoke gently. The Lord's house welcomes all who seek him, especially those who come with broken hearts. Charles remained bent forward through the sermon, shoulders hitching with quiet sobs. When communion came, he didn't rise. Mary Ellen found herself wanting to tell him it was okay, that he could take it, but the words wouldn't come. After service, people approached carefully. Some offered handshakes, others just nods. Martha Williams, who'd gossiped about the divorce for years, squeezed Charles's shoulder. "Welcome back," she said simply. Outside, Charles wiped his face with a handkerchief, embarrassed. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make a scene." "You didn't make a scene," Mary Ellen said, surprising herself. "You just felt something." "Everything. I felt everything I should have felt 40 years ago." He looked at the church doors. All those Sundays I missed, all those sermons, sitting beside you, watching Rachel grow up in this place. Emily tugged his sleeve. "You're here now, Grandpa." "Yes," he said, kneeling to her level. "I'm here now." As they walked to their cars, Mary Ellen overheard Martha Williams talking to her sister. Maybe it's not too late for Grace, even for him. The words followed her home, rattling around her mind like coins in a tin can. That evening, while Mary Ellen washed dishes, Emily sat at the kitchen table doing homework. "Mama?" "Yes, baby?" "Can Grandpa come for Sunday dinner next time?" Mary Ellen's hand stilled in the soapy water. "Emily, he's all alone." And he cried in church. People shouldn't eat alone after they cry. Such simple logic from a child, such complicated history from adults. I don't know, sweetheart. But he's family. It's not that simple. Emily chewed her pencil. Why not? How could she explain betrayal to someone who'd never been betrayed? How could she describe 40 years of anger to someone who forgave before sunset? Sometimes people hurt each other too much to eat dinner together. But you let him come to church. That's different. Why cease? Mary Ellen had no answer that would make sense to an 18-year-old who still believed in happy endings. Later, in bed, she stared at the ceiling. The image of Charles weeping wouldn't leave her. She'd prayed for him to suffer, to feel the pain he'd caused. But watching it happen brought no satisfaction, just a hollow ache, like touching an old bruise. Her anger was still there, comfortable as an old coat. But beneath it, something else stirred, fragile as spring grass, pushing through concrete. Not forgiveness, not yet. But maybe, just maybe, the beginning of beginning. She turned over, pulling the quilt high, trying to silence the voice that sounded suspiciously like Grace. Mary Ellen's fingers hesitated on the phone. 3 days had passed since church, 3 nights of tossing and turning, of Emily's innocent questions about Grandpa coming to dinner. "Hello?" Charles's voice was tentative, hopeful. "The park on Maple Street. Thursday at 2. Mary Ellen?" "Yes, of course, I'll—" She hung up before he could finish. Thursday arrived crisp and golden, October showing off before winter's grip. Mary Ellen arrived first, choosing a path near the old playground where they'd brought Rachel decades ago. The swings hung empty now, chains creaking in the breeze. Charles appeared at exactly 2, moving carefully down the leaf-strewn path. He'd dressed nicely, pressed khakis, a navy sweater she didn't recognize, trying without trying too hard. "Thank you for this," he said. She started walking without acknowledgement. He fell into step beside her, their pace slow, accommodating both their ages. The maples blazed overhead, scarlet, amber, burnt orange. Leaves crunched underfoot. For several minutes, neither spoke. "Remember when Rachel was 4?" Charles said finally. "She collected so many leaves her pockets tore?" Mary Ellen's mouth twitched. "Had to carry them in my purse. Found leaves in there for months. You made that book with her. Pressed them between wax paper. She still has it." They passed the sandbox where Rachel had built castles, declaring herself queen of the playground. The basketball court where teenagers now shot hoops had once been a garden where Rachel picked dandelions for Mother's Day bouquets. "Our first apartment was 3 blocks that way," Charles pointed east. "That terrible green carpet." "Lime green. Who chooses lime green carpet?" "The kitchen cabinet that wouldn't stay shut." "You fixed it with a rubber band and a nail." The memory surfaced unbidden. "Said you'd repair it properly next week." 3 years we lived with that rubber band." They turned onto a smaller path away from the playground. The sounds of children faded. "Remember the Buick?" Charles asked. "That rusty death trap? We rebuilt the engine together. You could name every part by the end." "Had to. Couldn't afford a mechanic." But she remembered more than necessity, remembered his patience teaching her, their grease-stained hands working side by side, the celebration kiss when the engine finally turned over. "You were so beautiful that day. Oil smudged on your cheek, biggest smile I'd ever seen." Mary Ellen's chest tightened. "Don't." "I'm sorry. I think about those days a lot now. Before I ruined everything." They reached a bench overlooking the pond. Charles gestured, and they sat, leaving space between them. Ducks paddled in lazy circles. A young couple pushed a stroller along the far shore. "The affair," Charles said suddenly. "You never asked why." "Didn't need to. Pretty young thing turned your head. Story old as time." "No." His voice was firm. "That's what I let you think. But it wasn't true. She wasn't younger or prettier. She was just different. And I was an arrogant fool who thought I deserved more than I had." Mary Ellen stared at the water. "I was promoted that year, remember? Thought I was somebody important. Started believing I'd outgrown our life. Outgrown you." He laughed bitterly. "Took me exactly 3 months to realize I'd thrown away everything real for an illusion. But you stayed with her. 20 years. Pride. Stupid, crushing pride. Couldn't admit the mistake. Then years passed and it felt too late. She and I, we were strangers living in the same house. No children, no laughter, just 2 people who'd destroyed something good for something empty." A leaf landed on the bench between them, brilliant red like fresh blood. "I wrote you letters," he continued. "Hundreds of them. Never sent a single one. Watched Rachel's graduation from across the street. Saw your husband's funeral announcement in the paper. Almost came. But what right did I have?" "None." The word came out flat, honest. "None," he agreed. but I watched over you anyway. Not stalking, just making sure you were okay. When the medical bill started, when the house payment came due, I couldn't stand by anymore." They sat in silence. A child's laughter echoed across the water. Mary Ellen watched the young mother pick up her toddler, spinning him around, both of them giggling. "I don't wish you dead anymore," she said quietly. Charles's breath caught. "But I can't forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. That's more grace than I deserve." "It's not grace. It's just tired. I'm tired of carrying it." He nodded, understanding more than she'd said. They sat until the sun dropped lower, painting everything gold. Finally, Mary Ellen stood. "I should go. Thank you for this afternoon." She walked away without answering, but at the path's bend she turned back. Charles remained on the bench, a solitary figure against the blazing trees. For a moment she saw the young man he'd been, the one who'd fixed their cabinet with a rubber band, who'd taught her about carburetors, who'd danced with her in that ugly green apartment. At home, Mary Ellen sat at her kitchen table, staring at nothing. Rachel found her there an hour later. "Mama, you okay?" "I remembered something today." "What?" "That I loved him once, really loved him before." Rachel sat down, reached for her mother's hand. "I'd forgotten that part," Mary Ellen whispered. "Made it easier to hate him if I forgot." Wednesday arrived with unseasonable warmth. Mary Ellen changed her blouse twice before settling on the navy one Rachel had given her last Christmas. "It's just dinner," she told her reflection. Rachel's house smelled of pot roast and fresh bread. Charles was already there, helping set the table with careful precision, placing each fork exactly parallel to its knife. "Mama," Rachel greeted her with a kiss. "He brought flowers. Can you believe it? Grocery store carnations, but still." The pink carnations sat in Rachel's good vase, trying their best to look elegant. They gathered in the dining room, Charles at one end, Mary Ellen at the other, Rachel and Emily between them like buffers. Grace was awkward, nobody sure who should lead until Emily volunteered, thanking God for family, even the complicated parts. Conversation stuttered through the salad course. Weather, the unseasonable warmth, more weather. Rachel's eyes darted between her parents like a tennis match. Then Emily disappeared into her room, returning with a large poster board. "I need to show Grandpa my art project." She unveiled it with flourish, a family tree drawn in careful colored pencil. At the roots, Mary Ellen and Charles connected by a golden line labeled Married 1976. Above them, Rachel bloomed like a strong trunk, and at the crown, Emily herself, surrounded by hearts and stars. "See? I included everyone." Mrs. Peterson said family trees should show the truth even if it's messy. Charles studied the poster, his eyes glistening. "You put me in your tree." "Of course, you're my grandpa." Mary Ellen watched his face crumple and rebuild itself. When he looked up, their eyes met across the table. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," Mary Ellen said. "Really beautiful." Dinner continued with Emily chattering about school, friends, her upcoming science fair. The tension eased by degrees. Charles asked intelligent questions about Emily's interests. Rachel relaxed enough to serve seconds. Over coffee and apple pie, Charles cleared his throat. "I've been thinking about Emily's future." Rachel's fork paused midway to her mouth. "College is expensive. I know you've been saving, Rachel, but He pulled an envelope from his jacket. "I want to cover it. All of it. Tuition, books, room and board. Wherever she wants to go." The dining room went silent. "We can't accept that," Mary Ellen said automatically. "Why not?" Rachel's voice was sharp. "Because of pride?" "Because—" Mary Ellen stopped. "Because why? Because accepting meant acknowledging him as family? Because it felt like forgiveness she wasn't ready to give?" "Please," Charles said quietly. "I missed everything else. Her first steps, first day of school, teaching her to ride a bike. Let me do this one thing right." Emily looked between the adults, confused by the tension. "Does this mean I can apply to Northwestern?" Rachel laughed, breaking the spell. "Let's get you through junior year first." Mary Ellen found herself outvoted, outmaneuvered by her daughter's practicality and her granddaughter's excitement. Charles tucked the envelope under Rachel's coffee cup with quiet satisfaction. The conversation drifted to safer ground. Emily asked about the old days, and Charles told the story of their first apartment's mouse problem. "Your grandmother named him Gerald." "I did not." "You absolutely did. Said if he was going to live rent-free, he needed a proper name. Gerald the Mouse." Rachel shook her head. "I can't believe you never told me this." "Set out cheese for him every night," Charles continued, "until the landlord brought in an exterminator." "She cried," he said softly, looking at Mary Ellen. "Actually cried over that mouse?" "He was just trying to survive," Mary Ellen heard herself say. "Weren't we all?" The words hung between them, meaning more than mice. Emily demanded more stories. Charles obliged. The time they drove to Chicago on no money and slept in the car. The Halloween Mary Ellen made Rachel's costume from newspaper and tinfoil. The blizzard that trapped them inside for 3 days with nothing but soup and a deck of cards. "She beat me 17 hands straight," Charles said. "Turned out she'd been counting cards the whole time." "You counted cards?" Rachel stared at her mother. "Your father was terrible at poker face. His left eye twitched when he had a good hand." "Still does," Charles admitted, and Mary Ellen surprised herself by laughing, a real laugh, rusty from disuse. The evening wound down naturally. Emily hugged Charles goodbye, then skipped upstairs to call friends about her college fund windfall. Rachel walked them to their cars. "Thank you both for coming, for trying." In the driveway, Charles paused by Mary Ellen's car. "I'll understand if this was too much, if you need space." It was fine. The words came out easier than expected. Emily needed this. He nodded, understanding what she hadn't said, that maybe they all had. During the drive home, Rachel took the long route. "I haven't heard you laugh like that in years, Mama." Mary Ellen watched the streetlights pass. "I forgot I could." "He's trying." "I know." "And Emily loves him already. She loves everyone. It's a gift." Rachel pulled into Mary Ellen's driveway, but didn't turn off the engine. "How do you feel? Really?" Mary Ellen considered lying, giving the expected bitter response. But the evening had shifted something. Lighter. Not light, but lighter. Like I've been holding my breath for 20 years and finally exhaled a little. "That's good, Mama. That's really good." Inside her quiet house, Mary Ellen got ready for bed slowly. She caught herself humming. When had she last hummed? In the darkness of her bedroom, she felt the familiar press of anger and hurt, but it sat different in her chest. Still there, still real, but no longer the only thing. For the first time in decades, she fell asleep without counting grievances. Mary Ellen woke to sunlight streaming through her bedroom curtains, a phenomenon she hadn't noticed in years. The weight that usually pressed her into the mattress felt manageable. She caught herself humming while filling the kettle, that old hymn from Sunday school, the one about morning mercies. The tea tasted better. The kitchen felt warmer. Even the ache in her joints seemed gentler. She pulled out her good stationery, the box Emily had given her last Christmas. Maybe she'd write Charles a note. Nothing dramatic, just acknowledgement that dinner had been pleasant, that Emily deserved to know her grandfather, that Sunday dinners might become regular if he behaved himself. The words came easier than expected. She crossed out, "if you behave yourself," and wrote instead, "if you'd like." Small steps. By 11:30, she'd rewritten the note 3 times, each version softer than the last. She was addressing the envelope when the phone rang. "Mama?" Rachel's voice cracked like ice underfoot. Mary Ellen's hand froze on the envelope. "It's Dad." He collapsed. "We're at St. Mary's. Come now." The envelope fell. The pen rolled across the table. Mary Ellen grabbed her purse without thinking, without breathing. Rachel met her in the emergency room lobby, mascara streaking her cheeks. They found him on his kitchen floor. The neighbor heard the crash. "When?" Maybe 2 hours ago, maybe more. The doctor appeared, young, tired, speaking in measured tones about hemorrhagic stroke, cranial pressure, uncertain prognosis, words that meant nothing and everything. Can I see him? He's in the ICU, family only. I'm his wife. The lie came automatic, decades-old habit. The doctor didn't question it. The ICU hummed with machines. Charles lay surrounded by monitors, tubes, wires, technology trying to hold him to life. His face drooped on one side. His left arm lay useless on the white sheet. Mary Ellen approached slowly, as if sudden movement might shatter something. His eyes opened, unfocused at first, then finding her. Recognition flickered. She saw it, felt it. His right hand twitched. She took that hand, surprised by how natural it felt after all these years. "Don't you dare leave like this." His fingers squeezed, barely perceptible, but there. "We were just starting to. I wrote you a letter. It's on my kitchen table. You were going to come to Sunday dinner." His eyes filled. One tear escaped, rolling crooked down his affected side. "The doctor says the next 24 hours are critical." She squeezed harder, as if she could anchor him through touch alone. "You hear me? 24 hours. You've waited 20 years to come back. You can fight for 24 hours. Rachel entered quietly, Emily behind her. The girl's face crumpled seeing her grandfather connected to machines. "Can he hear us?" "Yes," Mary Ellen said, though she didn't know. "Talk to him." Emily approached tentatively. "Hi, Grandpa. I already told everyone at school about the college fund. I can't back out now, okay? So you have to get better." Charles's eyes moved to her, soft with something beyond words. Rachel touched his foot through the blanket. "Dad, I'm here. We're all here." The nurse arrived to check vitals, gently suggesting they step out. Mary Ellen refused to release his hand. "I'm staying." "Visiting hours?" "I'm staying." Something in her tone ended the discussion. The afternoon crawled. Doctors came with updates that weren't updates, stable but critical. No changes. Wait and see. Rachel brought coffee that went cold. Emily curled in a chair, homework unopened in her lap. Evening shift brought a new nurse, older, kinder. She brought Mary Ellen a blanket without being asked. "How long were you married?" 22 years. Then, because the truth mattered now, divorced for 20 more. The nurse adjusted Charles's IV. Sometimes love needs time to circle back. Charles stirred, eyes opening again. Mary Ellen leaned close. "Remember that mouse, Gerald?" "You were right. I did cry. Cried because even something that small deserved a chance to live." Her voice broke. "You deserve a chance too. We both do." His mouth moved, trying to form words that wouldn't come. She understood anyway. "I know. I know you're sorry. I know you tried to make it right." The tears came freely now. "I wasted so much time being angry, so much time we could have, not forgotten, but moved forward." Rachel returned with sandwiches no one would eat. The evening nurse checked vitals again, noting small improvements in blood pressure, oxygen levels. Fragile hope. Mary Ellen stayed in her chair, Charles's hand in hers, watching his chest rise and fall. Each breath a small victory, each heartbeat on the monitor a promise that morning might come. 24 hours, she whispered again. "Give me 24 hours to say what I should have said years ago." The ICU settled into night rhythm. Rachel dozed in her chair. Emily had gone home with a friend's mother. Mary Ellen remained awake, vigilant, her thumb tracing circles on Charles's palm, a motion she'd forgotten she used to do, back when they were young and whole and unbroken. She thought of the letter on her kitchen table, its careful words about Sunday dinners and second chances. Tomorrow she'd bring it, read it to him. Tomorrow, if God granted them tomorrow. For now, she held on. The visitor's chair had been designed by someone who'd never spent a night in it. Mary Ellen shifted again, her spine protesting, her neck stiff from the awkward angle. 3:17 a.m. glowed green on the wall clock. The machines kept their rhythm, Ventilator whooshing, heart monitor beeping, IV pump clicking every few minutes like a metronome marking time they might not have. Charles hadn't moved since midnight. The nurse, third one tonight, had assured her this was normal, that rest helped healing. But Mary Ellen couldn't shake the fear that if she looked away, if she dozed even for a moment, he'd slip away in that gap of inattention. His face in the dim light looked ancient. When had he gotten so old? In her mind, frozen in anger, he'd remained the 48-year-old who'd packed his things on a Tuesday morning. But here lay a man of 70, cheeks hollow, skin paper thin, the years written in lines she hadn't been there to watch form. The anger sat heavy in her chest, familiar as breathing. 20 years of carefully tended fury, fed daily with remembered slights and betrayals. It pressed against something new, fragile, not quite forgiveness, but something softer, compassion maybe, or just exhaustion with carrying all that weight. She studied his hand, the one she still held. Age spots, a scar on the thumb she didn't remember. His wedding ring finger bore no mark. When had he stopped wearing it? The second marriage or after? The door whispered open. Rachel entered, carrying 2 cups, steam rising in the fluorescent half-light. Couldn't sleep either? Mary Ellen accepted the coffee, grateful for warmth against her palms. Chairs aren't meant for sleeping. Rachel pulled the second chair close, movements careful in the pre-dawn quiet. They sat without speaking, watching Charles breathe, sharing the vigil. I have to go to work soon. I know. Mom. Rachel's voice carried weight. You prayed he'd die alone. The words hit like ice water. Mary Ellen's hand tightened on the cup. Are you really going to let that come true? I'm here, aren't I? Your body's here? Rachel touched her shoulder, gentle but firm. Where's your heart? Mary Ellen wanted to snap back, to defend the walls she'd built, but the truth sat too heavy for deflection. I don't know where it is anymore. He made mistakes. He destroyed our family. Yes. Rachel's agreement surprised her. He did. And he spent 20 years trying to atone for it. The bills, the anonymous gifts, checking on you from a distance. He never asked for credit, never demanded recognition. That doesn't erase... No, it doesn't. But, Mom, what does holding on to the anger accomplish now? Look at him. He's dying. You're here watching him die while your heart's still locked away in 1984. The coffee tasted bitter. Everything tasted bitter these days. Rachel stood, gathering her purse. I'll be back after my shift. Emily's with the Johnsons. They'll take her to school. She paused at the door. You taught me that God forgives everything if we ask. Maybe it's time to ask Him to help you forgive too. The door closed, soft as prayer. Mary Ellen sat in the expanding silence. The machines continued their mechanical breathing, their digital heartbeats. Charles's chest rose and fell, rose and fell. 20 years. She spoke to the darkness, to him, to herself. 20 years I've carried this stone in my chest, fed it every morning with my coffee, nursed it through every holiday you missed, every Father's Day Emily asked about you. The heart monitor beeped steadily, offering no absolution. But you were there, weren't you? Paying for things, watching from wherever you were watching. Her voice cracked. Why didn't you just come to the door? Why didn't you fight for us? No answer except the ventilator's rhythm. She set down the coffee, moved to the window. The parking lot spread below. Pools of yellow light in pre-dawn darkness. Somewhere out there, the world prepared for another day. Here time had stopped, caught between heartbeats. The prayer came, stuttered, rusty from disuse. God, I don't know how to do this. Her knees found the floor, hands clasped on the bed rail. When did kneeling become so hard? I've been so angry, so bitter. I fed it and watered it and tended it like some poisonous garden. The tears came then, silent but steady. Help me. I don't know how to stop hating him, but I can't let him leave this world like this. Not with all this ugliness between us. The machines sang their electronic hymn. Charles's hand lay still on the white sheet. Give me strength. Not to forget, I can't forget, but to let go, to stop drinking this poison, to offer him something besides rage before it's too late. She stayed on her knees until they ached, praying words she hadn't said in decades, for grace, for time, for the wisdom to know what to do with both. When she finally stood, dawn was breaking pink through the window. Charles hadn't woken, but his color seemed better. Or maybe that was hope, coloring everything differently. She laid her head on the bed beside his still hand, exhaustion finally winning. I don't know how to stop hating you, she whispered into the hospital sheets, but I don't want you to leave this world like this. His fingers moved, maybe. So slight she might have imagined it, but she chose to believe it was real. The afternoon sun slanted through blinds, painting stripes across the hospital floor. Mary Ellen had dozed in the chair, her hand still resting near Charles's on the bed. A slight movement woke her, fingers twitching against the sheet. His eyes opened, unfocused at first, then finding her face. Mary? The word came broken, pulled from somewhere deep. Her heart lurched. She grasped his hand, careful of the IV line. I'm here, right here. His mouth worked, trying to form more words. The left side of his face drooped, uncooperative, but his eyes held hers with desperate clarity. Don't try to talk. Just rest. But his fingers pressed weakly against hers, insistent. Sorry. Shh. Save your strength. The door opened. Rachel entered with Emily, who carried a small keyboard case. Grandpa! Emily rushed forward, then caught herself, looking to her mother for permission. Gentle, sweetheart. Rachel guided her daughter to the bedside. He's awake, but very tired. Charles's eyes moved to his granddaughter, and something shifted in his face. Not quite a smile with the paralysis, but light breaking through clouds. Emily set the keyboard case down. I brought this from home. Mom said you used to play piano. That half-smile grew stronger. Mary Ellen remembered suddenly Charles at their old upright piano, teaching Rachel chopsticks, filling their small apartment with music before everything fell apart. Can I play for you? Emily asked. Charles blinked once, deliberate. Rachel helped Emily set up the small keyboard on the rolling tray table, adjusting the height. Emily's fingers found the keys, tentative at first, then stronger as she picked out the opening notes of Amazing Grace. The melody filled the sterile room, transforming it. Not perfect, Emily missed a note here and there, but pure in its intention. Charles's eyes filled, a single tear tracking down his right cheek, the side that still obeyed him. Mary Ellen found herself humming along, then singing soft and low, Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Charles's lips moved, no sound coming out, but she knew the words he shaped. I once was lost, but now am found. Emily played through twice before stopping, looking pleased with herself. Grandma taught me that one. Beautiful, Rachel whispered. Charles's hand squeezed Mary Ellen's, weak but insistent. His eyes held hers with an intensity that made her chest tight. She understood suddenly. He was fighting, not for himself, not for more years, but for this, for these moments, for the chance to have his family around him, to hear his granddaughter play, to hold his ex-wife's hand without anger between them. We're not going anywhere, Mary Ellen told him. Rest now. The afternoon faded into evening. Rachel took Emily home for dinner and homework, promising to return. Mary Ellen remained, watching Charles drift in and out of consciousness. When he woke, she was ready with ice chips, spooning them gently between his lips. The doctors say you're stable, she told him. That's good. You're a fighter. Always were. His eyes questioned. Stubborn as a mule, my mother used to say about you. A smile tugged at her mouth. Guess that's serving you well now. As darkness settled outside, she pulled out her Bible, worn soft from years of handling. Would you like me to read? That deliberate blink again. Yes. She opened to Psalms, finding comfort in familiar passages. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. Charles's breathing steadied, matching the rhythm of the ancient words. His hand remained in hers, warm and alive. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. His fingers tightened slightly. She looked up from the page to find him watching her, fully present despite the medication, despite the damage the stroke had done. We wasted so much time, Charles. The words came without planning. All those years of silence, all that energy spent on anger. His eyes glistened. But maybe God is giving us this little piece back. Not much, but something. A chance to let go of the poison before... She couldn't finish, wouldn't name what they both knew, that his condition remained critical, that each breath was borrowed time. Emily needs to know her grandfather. Not the story of him, not the anger around him, but him. You? Charles's mouth worked again. Thank you. For what? Not alone. The words cost him. She saw the exhaustion pull at him, but he fought it, keeping his eyes on hers. You're not alone, she confirmed. Whatever happens, you won't be alone. He slept then, his hand still holding hers. Mary Ellen sat in the growing darkness, feeling the weight of years lifting slowly, replaced by something she hadn't felt in decades. Not quite peace, not yet, but the possibility of it. The monitors kept their vigil, counting heartbeats like prayers. Outside, the hospital continued its nighttime rhythms, but here in this room time had become something else, not frozen, but precious. Each minute a gift they'd almost missed. She squeezed his hand gently and continued reading, her voice soft in the darkness. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. Duh. The morning arrived with Rachel at the door carrying fresh clothes and a worried expression. Mama, you've been here 2 nights straight. You need rest. Mary Ellen straightened in the uncomfortable chair, her spine protesting. I'm fine. You're not fine. Look at yourself. When did you last eat a proper meal? The cafeteria has sandwiches. Rachel set the clothes on the bedside table, studying her mother's stubborn set jaw. At least go home for a shower. I'll stay with him. No. Mama? I said no. Mary Ellen's voice carried steel beneath the exhaustion. I left him alone for 30 years, Rachel. Not again. Rachel's shoulders dropped. She pulled up another chair, sitting close. He wouldn't blame you for taking care of yourself. Maybe not, but I'd blame myself. They sat in silence, watching Charles's chest rise and fall. The bruising from the IV had spread up his arm, purple-yellow patches against pale skin. I'll bring you dinner later, Rachel said finally, kissing her mother's cheek. Something better than vending machine chips. After Rachel left, Mary Ellen found herself alone with Charles again. The room felt smaller in daylight, more ordinary. She adjusted his blanket, smoothed the edge where it had bunched. You probably can't understand me, she began, her voice rusty. The nurses say different things. Some think you hear everything. Others say the medication keeps you too far under. His eyelids fluttered, but didn't open. Either way, I need to say this. Maybe more for me than you. She settled back in her chair, finding his hand beneath the blanket. Remember our first apartment? That awful green carpet in the living room? You said it looked like someone had been sick on it, but it was all we could afford. 500 square feet and a radiator that clanged all night. A ghost of movement in his fingers. But we were happy. God, we were so happy then. You'd come home from the factory covered in grease, and I'd have dinner waiting, usually something stretched with rice or potatoes because money was tight. We'd eat at that tiny table, barely room for 2 plates, and plan our future. Her throat tightened. Rachel came along so fast. 9 months after the wedding, almost to the day. You were terrified in the delivery room, remember? Kept asking the nurses if everything was normal, if I was okay. When they finally put her in your arms, you cried. Big, tough Charles, crying over a 7-pound baby. She traced circles on his palm with her thumb. Those were good years. You teaching Rachel to ride her bike in the church parking lot. Sunday picnics by the river. That Christmas, you worked overtime for 3 months to buy her that dollhouse. She played with it until it fell apart. The memories sharpened, edges cutting. Then came Linda. His hand twitched. I knew before you told me. Women always know. You started working late, showering before bed instead of in the morning. New cologne. I told myself I was imagining things, but my body knew. My bones knew. Tears came without warning, hot and sudden. The night you left, Rachel was at youth group. You'd packed while I was at the grocery store, so calculated, so careful not to face me, but I came home early, found you loading boxes into your truck. She grabbed a tissue, wiped her face roughly. You said she made you feel young again. That we'd become strangers living in the same house. Maybe that was true, but you never tried to find me again, never fought for what we'd built. Charles's breathing hitched. His eyes opened, unfocused but aware. The divorce papers came a month later. I signed them in the church parking lot, sitting in our old station wagon. Seemed fitting, ending our marriage where Rachel learned to ride her bike. She leaned closer, making sure he could see her. I wanted you to hurt like I hurt. Every night I'd lie in our bed. I kept it, did you know that? Same bed for 20 years after you left. I'd stare at your empty side and pray you were miserable, pray she'd leave you, pray you'd end up alone, understanding finally what you'd thrown away. His eyes filled, tears pooling but not falling. And you did end up alone, Rachel told me. Your second marriage lasted what, 5 years? Then nothing. Just you in that apartment, sending money we never asked for. Her voice cracked completely. But here's what I never admitted. I chose loneliness too. Men asked me out over the years, good men from church, widowers who knew how to be faithful. I said no to all of them, held on to my anger like it was keeping me warm, when really it was burning me alive from the inside. Charles's hand squeezed hers, weak, barely there, but intentional. Can you hear me? She whispered. Another squeeze. A nurse appeared in the doorway, checking charts. Oh, he's responding? That's wonderful. Yes, he can hear you, dear. Stroke patients often understand everything, even when they can't speak. Keep talking to him. It helps. After the nurse left, Mary Ellen pressed his hand to her cheek. There's more I need to say. Things that should have been said years ago, but I'm not ready. Tomorrow, Charles. Tomorrow I'll tell you everything. She rested her forehead against their joined hands, feeling his pulse against her skin, still here, still fighting. Just give me tomorrow. So, morning light sliced through the hospital blinds, painting golden stripes across Charles's bed. Mary Ellen had dozed in the chair, her hand still clasping his, neck stiff from the awkward angle. She woke to find Rachel and Emily standing in the doorway, coffee cups steaming. Mama, you need to eat something, Rachel said softly. Not yet. Mary Ellen's voice came out rough. Bring Emily closer. They gathered around the bed, 3 generations forming a half circle. Charles's eyes were closed, but his breathing remained steady. The machines beeped their mechanical rhythm. Mary Ellen looked at her daughter, then her granddaughter. I need witnesses for this. For what, Grandma? Emily asked. For what should have been said long ago. She turned to Charles, lifting his hand between both of hers. The words had lived in her throat all night, pressing against her teeth, demanding release. Charles, can you hear me? His eyelids fluttered, opened, found her face. Good. She drew a shaking breath. I've carried hate for you like a stone in my chest for 23 years, fed it every morning with my coffee, nursed it every night before bed. It became part of me, maybe the biggest part. Rachel reached for Emily's shoulder, pulling her close. But I'm tired. Bone, tired of being angry. Tired of that stone crushing everything soft in me. Tears came fast now, dropping onto their joined hands. So here it is, Charles. in front of our daughter and granddaughter, in front of God Himself. I forgive you." His mouth opened slightly. No sound, but his eyes widened. "I forgive you for Linda, for leaving, for making me raise Rachel alone while you started over with someone else. I forgive you for the nights I couldn't pay the electric bill, for the parent-teacher conferences you missed, for Rachel's wedding where she had no father to walk her down the aisle." Emily started crying quietly. Rachel's hand found her mother's shoulder. "But more than that, I forgive myself for wasting all these years hating you, for poisoning my own heart with bitterness, for teaching our daughter that men leave and love dies and trust is foolish." Charles's lips trembled. His throat worked, fighting for words. "I won't carry the hate any more. It's too heavy, and I'm too old, and there's been enough waste." He managed to turn his hand, weakly gripping hers back. His mouth formed words without sound at first, then barely a whisper. "Thank you." His eyes moved to the window, then back to her face. "For not letting me die alone." Emily stepped forward, her young voice breaking the silence that followed. She began singing, soft and uncertain at first. "Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound." Rachel joined, her alto mixing with her daughter's soprano. "That saved a wretch like me." Mary Ellen's voice, cracked and imperfect, completed the harmony. "I once was lost, but now am found." Charles's eyes moved between them, drinking in their faces. His lips moved with the words, though no sound emerged. "Was blind, but now I see." They sang through the verses, voices strengthening as they went. Other patients' visitors paused in the hallway. A nurse stopped her rounds to listen. The morning sun climbed higher, flooding the room with warmth. "Through many dangers, toils, and snares I have already come. 'Tis grace hath brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home." On the word home, Charles exhaled, long, deep, like he'd been holding that breath for decades. His eyes remained on Mary Ellen's face, peaceful now, the deep lines of regret smoothing. His hand went still in hers. The heart monitor's steady beep stretched into a single, endless note. "Daddy?" Rachel gasped. Mary Ellen didn't let go. She held his hand as nurses rushed in, as they checked for vitals, as they noted the time. She held on as they gently suggested she might want to step back, held on as Rachel sobbed into Emily's shoulder. "He's gone, Mama," Rachel whispered. "I know." Mary Ellen brought his hand to her lips, kissed the knuckles that once wore a wedding ring matching hers. "But he didn't go alone." Emily moved to her grandmother's side, wrapping thin arms around her waist. "Are you okay, Grandma?" Mary Ellen finally released Charles's hand, letting the nurses pull the sheet up gently. She turned to embrace both her daughter and granddaughter, the three of them standing together as morning light filled every corner of the room. "There's peace in this," she said, surprising herself by meaning it. He knew he was forgiven. He knew he was loved. That's more than most of us get. Through her tears, and there were so many tears, she felt something lift from her chest. That stone she'd carried, that weight of bitterness and rage, dissolved like salt in water. What remained felt strange and new, not happiness exactly, but something lighter, something that might, given time, grow into joy. "Come on," she said, guiding them toward the door. "Let's go home." As they left, she glanced back once at the still form beneath the sheet. Not the man who'd left her, not the stranger who'd been sending checks, but Charles, the boy who'd danced with her at their wedding, the young father who'd cried holding Rachel, the broken old man who'd found his way back to grace. "Goodbye," she whispered. And for the first time in 23 years, she meant it without anger. The church filled slowly that Thursday morning, a week after Charles passed. Mary Ellen sat in the front pew, watching people file in. Some she recognized, others were strangers. Word had spread through their small town about the reconciliation, the forgiveness that came just in time. "Never thought I'd see this day," old Mrs. Henderson whispered to her husband. loud enough for Mary Ellen to hear. After what he did to her, Mary Ellen turned, meeting the woman's eyes. Neither did I. But here we are. Pastor Williams approached the pulpit, clearing his throat. The murmuring settled. We gather today to remember Charles Robert Mackenzie, a man who, like all of us, was imperfect, but who found grace in his final days. Mary Ellen stood when her turn came, her legs steadier than she'd expected. She'd written notes, but left them folded in her pocket. Some things needed to come from the heart, not paper. 23 years ago, if you'd told me I'd be standing here, speaking at Charles's funeral with anything but anger, I'd have called you crazy. Her voice carried clear through the sanctuary. Many of you know our story, know what he did, what I became because of it. She spotted several women nodding, the divorced ones, the abandoned ones, the bitter ones, like she'd been. I spent 2 decades praying he'd die alone. Carried that hate like it was precious, like it was all I had left of our marriage. But hate's a funny thing. You think you're punishing someone else, but you're really just poisoning yourself, one day at a time. Rachel wiped her eyes in the front row. Emily sat between her mother and grandmother's empty seat, back straight, listening. Charles spent his last years secretly paying my medical bills, my dialysis, Emily's college fund, even kept my house from foreclosure, never asked for credit, never asked for thanks, just gave. While I was cursing his name, he was saving my life. A sob escaped from somewhere in the back. Mary Ellen pressed on. His last words were thanking me for not letting him die alone. But the truth is, he saved me from something worse, living alone inside my own bitterness. In those final days, we found something we'd lost. Not the young love we'd started with, but something different, harder earned, grace. She looked at the closed casket, draped in white roses, his favorite. Charles wasn't a perfect man. Neither am I a perfect woman. But in the end, we were 2 broken people who let God work through the cracks. If we could find forgiveness after everything, anyone can. She returned to her seat as Pastor Williams spoke about redemption, about second chances, about the mysterious ways grace operates. But Mary Ellen barely heard him. She was watching the faces in the pews, the tight mouths softening, the crossed arms uncrossing, the bitter women leaning forward like flowers toward sun. After the service, they gathered at the cemetery. The October air bit sharp, leaves swirling around headstones. As they lowered Charles into the ground, Emily stepped forward. "Grandpa, I promised to graduate college, for you and Grandma both, to prove that love can last, even when it breaks for a while." Mary Ellen pulled her granddaughter close as dirt covered the casket. Around them, people dispersed slowly, but several women lingered. "Mary Ellen?" Janet Morrison approached, her own divorce still fresh. "What you said in there, how do you start?" "Forgiving, I mean, when it hurts so much." "You start by admitting the hate's killing you faster than it's hurting them," Mary Ellen said. "Then you take it one day at a time, one prayer at a time." 3 weeks later, Mary Ellen sat in the church basement, a circle of women around her. The grief support group had transformed into something else, a forgiveness group, though nobody called it that officially. "I wrote my ex-husband a letter," Sharon admitted, clutching her coffee cup. "Haven't sent it yet, but I wrote it without calling him names. That's progress, right?" "That's huge progress," Mary Ellen assured her. "Took me 20 years to get that far." They met every Tuesday. Mary Ellen shared her story repeatedly, each telling revealing new layers. How bitterness had cost her joy. How she'd almost missed her chance. How grace had arrived anyway, patient as sunrise. "The thing about resentment," she told them one evening, "is we think it makes us strong. But it's like carrying a hot coal, hoping someone else gets burned. Only person it hurts is you." Some women cried, some argued, some left and came back. But slowly, letters got written. Phone calls got made. Not all reconciliations, some bridges were too burned, but releases, letting go. On a mild evening in early December, Mary Ellen sat on her porch, Bible open to Corinthians. The sunset painted the sky pink and gold, reminding her of that last morning in Charles's hospital room. Emily appeared in the doorway. "Mind if I join you, Grandma?" "Never." Mary Ellen patted the swing beside her. They rocked gently, the chains creaking in familiar rhythm. Emily rested her head on her grandmother's shoulder. "Mom says you're different now, lighter." "I am." Mary Ellen closed the Bible, holding it against her chest. "Spent so many years carrying weight that wasn't mine to carry." "Do you miss him, Grandpa?" Mary Ellen considered. "I miss what we could have been, but I'm grateful for what we got at the end. Some people never get that chance." The first stars appeared, faint against the darkening sky. Mary Ellen whispered into the evening air, words she'd been thinking but hadn't said aloud. "We were broken, Charles." But grace fixed what hate could not. Emily squeezed her hand. "You're going to be okay, aren't you, Grandma?" Mary Ellen smiled, feeling it reach her eyes for the first time in years. "Better than okay, sweet girl. I'm free." They sat until full dark, the porch light drawing moths in dizzy circles. Inside, Rachel clinked dishes, preparing dinner. Life continued, ordinary and precious. "You know what?" Mary Ellen said suddenly. "I used to think my story was about what I lost. But maybe it was always about what I'd find. Just took me too long to go looking." Emily lifted her head. "What did you find?" "Peace, purpose, proof that it's never too late for grace." She kissed her granddaughter's forehead. "And the knowledge that love, even broken love, leaves something beautiful behind." The swing creaked on, the stars brightened. And Mary Ellen Hartley, who'd once prayed for a man to die alone, sat surrounded by love, her heart finally, impossibly, whole. If you enjoyed the story, I hand-picked this next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.